while you're not currently within the city limits, ITP, you are in what would be considered Metro Atlanta.
Thanks for doxing me.
I just meant right now. And by the time we upload this, you could be anywhere else.
Who knows where I'll live?
I didn't even say where you live. I said where you are.
Okay, sure. I don't travel far to come record the podcast. That's true. I'm under the burb. I'm suburban.
Is there a way I can talk about the 90s, what a time it was to be in Atlanta, and I can just talk about how it was that way in the past? Here's what I'm getting at. The Falcons of Atlanta, which I would say for anyone who lives in Atlanta is the premier team of the city.
Yeah, perennial winners. Never disappointed us.
You just wait until the Olympics has gridiron.
We get flag football next Olympics.
In LA, the Falcons, members of which will likely not appear at the next Olympics, did pioneer the Dirty Bird.
True.
Which I believe we should do for this episode because it is our Dirty 30. Here's the problem.
Okay.
I don't know how to do the Dirty Bird.
Neither do I. Nor if you taught me, would I do it well. Also, audio medium.
So here's what I'm going to say instead. We are both doing the Dirty Bird right now and doing it impeccably.
You look so cool.
This does not at all resemble the Funky Chicken.
No. There's a lot of swagger here. This is a very cool wing simulation that you are doing currently. Trust me, everyone.
I would even go so far as to say that yours is giving Riz.
Jerod, thank you. That's all I've ever wanted, to be acknowledged for my Riz.
On another podcast that I'm doing in my head called When Slang Goes Too Far, I have an episode about giving, where if you don't actually follow it with anything, it just leaves too much to be desired.
I agree, but I do, as an English major, embrace the evolution of our language.
That's why I qualified that by going too far, because I appreciate slang and all that came before and all that will come after. But at some point, it stops making sense, even within its own context.
Correct. I agree. Words should mean something.
Right. I don't mind that they change meaning over time. I just don't want them to lose meaning.
It's fair.
In this minute of Home Alone, there aren't very many words.
Not many words at all. It's a dialogue light moment in the movie.
Kevin's only line is gasp.
That's true.
I don't know what it says in the screenplay, but that's from my recollection here and what I think we saw. But in this 30th minute, which feels momentous.
Yeah, I think I'm proud of us for hitting number 30. And it feels like we are hitting a major pivot point of the movie, too.
It's almost as if there's a reason this film is a classic.
I did have that thought. I even wrote it down when I was watching it over and over, watching this minute over and over, that it seems very intentional, pacing-wise, that the Wet Bandits are attempting to enter the McAllister home for the very first time right here at the 30-minute mark. The main external conflict of the movie is presenting itself right here at we're about a third of the way through it. This is the beginning of Act 2.
The musical analog would be Don't Bore Us, Get to the Chorus.
As a person who's in a band with you and also an enjoyer of bands that you are in without me, I'll applaud you for not wasting time. You get to your choruses pretty quick.
To borrow a phrase from a comic that you and I referenced prior to recording,
Richard
the universe...
No.
The universe ordered a song. I'm going to give them a song.
Is that Berbiglia?
That was Jimmy.
Oh, Car.
Yes, we do have to be specific in this household.
Yeah, not the sequel starring Owen Wilson. Cars.
I didn't know he was in that band.
There's not a lot of Cars songs in the Cars movie.
But a car has the most screen time in this minute.
A vehicle? Is a van a car?
I've silently had this debate to myself when teaching a toddler about things that we see on the road,
yeah,
parking
that's
lots.
tough.
because
tough.
when pointing at everything,
Yeah.
the one big bucket is cars.
Car. Yeah. Go play with your cars.
Autos,
Yeah.
they're all automobiles.
Vehicles. Go play with your vehicles, child. That's tough.
Is it a square rectangle relationship where some cars are vans, but not all cars are vans? Like a van is a car?
I think you might be onto something because we never call it a van dealership, right?
It feels weird, especially when you're talking about a truck.
I feel the need to back up a little bit because
We haven't described this minute.
we haven't described this minute, but I also want to clarify for all the people who are just pulling out their mail applications to email us at thehomealoneminute@gmail.com. Just want to clarify that Jerod and I both know that Weezer covered You Might Think for the Cars 2 soundtrack. Of course we know this. Of course we know this.
You can also email us at thehomealoneminute@verygmail.com.
Oh, is that ready?
It is, but I think you should also cut that because that's confusing. We don't need more than one email address. No one's going to be jumbling. Like, we need one email address.
I mean, why have it if we don't at least mention it?
Or how about this? Because we have the freedom to fix this before it goes out, what should that address be? And should it be way shorter? Should it be ham@verygmail.com?
I think so. Ham, like HAM, Home Alone Minute @verygmail.com. So that's not ready yet 100%. But
it is theoretically, because anything that's not Sonny will go to me.
Super duper. You know who will test this out for us is our boy Steven.
I'm excited about that.
Yeah, Steven will do it. He sent us a little email the other day because he got a little worried over our
Gap, Old Navy.
Yeah, we had a little release gap. You and I got some wires crossed, and neither one of us hit post on the episode.
Can I spend at least some portion of this 30th episode praising your generosity in framing that as our wires as opposed to my wires?
Takes two to mess up a podcast release schedule.
I was going to try and figure out what word to replace tango with, but I don't know how I would describe the dance that Kevin later does in this film.
I'm not familiar with this tango. I'm only familiar with the expression, it takes two to mess up a podcast release schedule.
In the military, they have a phonetic alphabet.
They do.
And when they shorten things like it takes two to mess up a podcast release schedule, they'll shorten certain words and they won't always use the first letter in case the message is being intercepted.
Okay.
And you have to decrypt it with a cipher.
Okay.
Tango is for T.
Oh, I see. You've gone on 2 long walks this episode already. I love it. I love it. Wouldn't be a 30th episode extravaganza without Jerod going a long way for a short joke. Okay, we got the Weezer Cars cover business out of the way. We got to recap this episode. Jerod, what's happening in minute 30 of Home Alone?
So we finish a shot that had previously been panning from the Grinch over Kevin's garbage eating, and we're landing on Kevin leaping, resting away innocently as a van approaches 671 Lincoln Boulevard. This van contains not one, but 2 wet bandits. Both of those wet bandits exit said van, make the tiniest bit of noise, which wakes up the aforementioned Leapin' Kevin. And right at the end of the minute, we get a bit of his panicked response to this by switching on a couple of light switches in his home.
Great summary.
Can I start closer to the end by calling out something that you were very much right about? And
I like this already. Yeah, please.
It's not like we haven't seen this all play out in this film, having seen it a few times, but I just want to connect those dots for everyone. The 2 crowbars theory, as we'll call it,
yeah,
falls apart in this minute.
Sure does.
Because we see 2 bandits take one path toward a single entry point.
Let's go down through the basement.
Now, you could say that the 2 crowbars are needed for 2 competent bandits, and one of them is too much of a follower for it to actually be useful, but little shaky, little shaky.
I'll go back towards the beginning of this minute. This is our first good view of like the full van. We kind of got a glimpse at it previously, but we get a better full shot of the van. I appreciate all of the loose pipes and ducts that they have just sort of like piled onto the top of it. And it makes me wonder, there are a few options, and I wonder which one you subscribe to. 1, they stole this van, and it just happens to look like this. 2, they're so good at thieving that they've artificially created a more accurate looking electrical plumbing service van. Or 3, one of them either has a current or former career where this is their legitimate work van that they still have, but they use it for burgling these days.
I lean 70-30 toward 1 and 3 respectively.
Okay.
I allocate 0% to them having concocted this facade.
Okay. So you're not giving them that much credit.
No, because it's a lot.
It's a good cover because of that, though. It really looks like the kind of van that would just be out at somebody's house because they're getting some work done because of all the pipes and stuff on top of the van.
Certainly. And the easiest way for something to look legit is for it to be legit.
I've seen The Wire. I understand.
The easiest lie to tell is one that's mostly true.
Yeah. I run a legitimate photocopying business.
Using those same 3, what do you think is most likely?
I like the narrative of number 3, that they at some point were legitimate plumber electricians. One of them was at least, or at least they were sort of close to this profession, like, maybe a brother-in-law, some situation like that. It seems like a good racket for casing a house too. You show up, you invent some sort of flimsy excuse as to why you can't fix this plumbing problem. You got to go get a part. You'll be back in a week. And then now you know where all of their goods are and the family's home schedule and stuff like that.
It also makes for a very humanizing origin story if they started legit and worked into this, because as we have come to find, a lot of crime is economics. So if you have someone who is working for okay plumbing and heating, and they are constantly in these large homes of very wealthy people, and they've fallen on hard times, say, hey, I'm already in this.
It's a sympathetic downfall.
Right.
Yes. And this is where the folks who keep making ill-conceived Home Alone sequels, reboots, rehashes, whatever you want to call them, are failing to realize that the OG HACU is ripe with stories like this to share. Young Marvin. It's just like Joker. Let's get Joaquin Phoenix.
Yep.
To play young Daniel Stern.
Well, that's what I was just going to say, is that if you do that prequel, it is not a comedy.
No, it doesn't have to be. People love Home Alone. They don't want to see a fourth generation copy of a copy of a copy of it. They want to dig deep into this universe. We need young wet bandits. We need childhood Peter McAllister saving his uncle's farm from bandits. We need to explore all that it has to offer.
I want to see him in the back of that station wagon.
I know. Me too. Maybe someday I'll know someone who's independently wealthy and will finance my dreams.
Which is why the sponsor for this episode is Helix.
We could do it sort of like a M. Night Shyamalan twist sort of thing, where it's like you're watching Split the whole time and it's like, all right, I guess this is just some sort of like, murderer, psycho kind of movie. But at the end, you realize, oh man, this is tied to that movie. This is
in the HACU.
That's what we need to do. It seems like a regular movie. Then at the end, he's like, I think I'll name my kid Kevin when I grew up. Yo, mind blown. That's what we do.
Yeah, maybe the last name reveal is just a bit before that, so you don't fully process it, right? Like it says McAllister residence on something.
Yeah. The uncle is his mom's brother, so he's got a different last name. But then later on, he's like, Peter Peter McAllister. Then you cue the John Williams music.
The airplane interval. Bum, bum.
Yeah.
But two of them, which I won't do because I don't want us to get flagged.
Yeah. John Williams descends from a helicopter with his lawyers. The airplane industry and the elevator industry paid me a lot of money for those two notes. How dare you?
So anyway, OK Plumbing and Heating, with a tagline that is practical for segmentation, but maybe unnecessary.
Yeah, remind me what it is.
Residential work is our specialty.
I like how they're the only ones who demonstrate how the McAllisters get into their own garage and stuff. You have to go like sort of swoop around the circular driveway and then back into the deeper recess of the driveway. And they do that.
I don't think you have to do that based on the way a normal car would park, right? Because they would pull into as opposed to pull back.
Yeah, you're right, because their cars in the garage, like we see the license plates, don't we? Like they
Right.
pulled in like hood first. Yeah,
Well,
that's a good
I mean,
point.
this van has a front license plate, but
I guess do all Illinois vehicles?
it's a bit of trivia I don't know the answer to. Sorry, to which I do not know the answer.
You can end sentences and prepositions. It's fine.
Is that where slang has brought us?
No, that's where the English language has brought us. That's a Latin rule that some pedants have dragged over to our language.
I just get the vibe that you've done this like cool teacher thing where you've turned your hat backwards, you spun the chair around, you've got your arms across over it, and you go, look, that's a Latin rule. We can break that. The problem is I was the kid in school who was very susceptible to that, still am, and I'm like, you're a cool teacher.
Thank you. You get me. Now, Jerod, did you know that William Shakespeare was sort of like the first rapper? He was sort of like a, 1600s Kendrick Lamar, if you will.
Soliloquy cipher.
If you want to talk about beef, get into Marlowe. Some camera work that I appreciate in this minute is Kevin sleeping, cameras panning left to right, cut to the wet bandits, cameras panning right to left, opposite direction, helpful for us to establish the contrast. Good guy, bad guy. And after that, there's a good bit of movement, camera movement with Harry and Marv. It kind of sweeps as Marv is getting out of the van and meeting Harry on the other side. It sweeps back over as they're walking over like to the basement steps. And the whole time on the inside of the house while Kevin's watching them, it's all stationary. So we get a lot of like camera movement to kind of contrast what's going on here and what the characters have going on.
Don't we zoom in on him when he wakes up, though?
Yeah, it's not completely. It does move a little bit, but
sorry, I misunderstood the meaning there.
It's a much more active camera with Harry and Marv. They're roaming and Kevin's staying still, and the contrast helps us. It adds to that terror. This is a really frightening moment, I think, to wake up in the middle of the house and in the middle of the night and see two people coming into your home. That's horrifying. And I think the camera movements kind of adds to that tension.
Do you think there's a bit of a transition there where we have, I guess, a stationary look from within the home out where the camera's not moving, but we see their silhouettes moving?
Yeah.
And as they become stationary, because we have a very still shot of them in the stairwell.
Yes, we do.
And at that same time, we start seeing him move because we're following him through. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. So as soon as they get to a point of stillness, Kevin springs into action. So they're both always doing the opposite, which you need when you're trying to have a good guy and a bad guy.
A little bit of Newton, a little bit of universal law, conservation of energy, etc.
Sure.
This is for all those cool teachers out there. If you want to interject a little Home Alone in your curriculum.
You know who wasn't Skibbity Toilet? Little guy named Isaac Newton. Now, he had some riz. In that shot where the silhouettes of the bandits are going past the window, There's a visible snack wrapper that I don't think we've seen before. Did you see it?
That's in frame while we're looking out the window.
Yeah, just as like carefully composed in the shot as the crunch taters and Pepsis of the previous shot, as Harry and Marv are lurking past the window. Most of the things are dark, but there's one very clearly visible wrapper that I don't think we've...
Skittles one?
There's Skittles there. I don't think we've seen Skittles yet.
So we see that, I want to say in the minute before this, but we don't see it as clearly.
Okay, I'll take it. I'm not going to go back and listen or watch. That minute's dead to me. I'm minute 30 and on.
Yeah, don't quote me that it's on the minute right before, but we have seen it before now.
I love our podcast. Have we seen this empty Skittles wrapper on before?
No, I can say I have high levels of confidence, HLOC, that we've seen it before. The level of confidence that it's minute 29 is closer to 80 as opposed to high 90s.
I'll take it. I'll believe you.
But yes, it is about as close as you can get in this particular minute without it actually being a readable logo.
I think we've played this game before, but I'm going to ask you the question. How many cuts are in this minute?
Can I use a tally?
Yeah. I mean, I'll shave down this to make it sound like you answered quickly. Carry the 3.
Well, so there's one set that I feel like would add 2, because it's a back to him, back to Van, that I actually don't know if it's continuous or if I'm just thinking it's back and forth. Run is, light switches. 9 or close to.
Yeah, 10. 10 cuts, which is pretty healthy. This is an actively edited
busy
minute.
We might say.
It's a little busy. And it's going to get busier. I mean, this isn't the most action-packed minute, but it does have a lot of back and forth between the Wet Bandits and Kevin. And that back and forth, again, it's got to be paced correctly to convey that tension that we should feel here. Would you, either at 8 years old or today, have the same idea that Kevin has here to just quickly turn on all the lights he can get to?
Yes.
Yeah?
Because I am not one of those people who is just waiting for an opportunity to, quote, defend myself. I want to give you every opportunity to go away. I'm not waiting for that hero moment where I can shoot a person. Like, I want to give you every reason to not enter my home.
Yeah. I just don't know. It strikes me as a smart move done quickly. Maybe it is just gut instinct. Oh, let me turn all the lights on because dark is scary. Let these people know that someone's home. But panic doesn't take over.
But isn't that a panicked response?
It is, but it's not a poor one. It's a good idea. I just don't know if I guess I don't have a lot of faith in myself. I would panic and do something stupid, run into a wall, hide in a closet and let them come in, run out of the house. I would do something ill-advised.
So this is the fight, flight, or freeze moment, right? And
maybe a fourth option is do something that doesn't make any sense.
Well, we're not saying that to be the exhaustive list, just saying that impulse, that feeling, that moment is the one that we're in. And
run, fight, hide, I think is run, hide, fight is what I think the order of operations is supposed to be in an emergency. But just turning on the lights is such a simple, practical thing to do, and it turns out to be effective. I just don't have a lot of faith in myself that that's what would immediately come to mind.
Have you not had a situation like this where you even suspected something like this might be happening?
Now, I mean, if you put it that way,
I'm not saying someone was even attempting to, just like a noise or something that happened where you're like,
yes, I'll say, yeah, that's of course happened. Like you start hearing strange noises in your house, so you just turn on the lights. That's different than this.
But you're saying you didn't do that to signal to anyone. You were doing that for your own clarity.
Yeah, let me get the lights on in here. Let me. Yeah, I was trying to increase the vision, trying to chase away the ghost, the Draculas that had entered my home. Kevin watched the two men walk past his window and head down towards the basement. I don't know. I think it's just It's so simple. And maybe I would do it. I don't know if I actually would.
I feel like you would. Because I'll say, to me, it feels very natural. It feels primal almost. Because if you think about coming upon a bear or something, woods, predator, what a lot of animals do and have the impulse to do is to make yourself big, right?
Mm-hmm.
Make yourself big, make yourself threatening. And if you'll allow me, this is coming back to House as a character, and he's using that house as an extension. And the easiest way for him to make himself big is to make himself more people and to make himself a house that is...
Yeah.
We don't see that yet, but that's what he's doing here. He's signaling that there are people home. There's a bigger unit that you're coming into. It's not just a boy that is home alone. It is a group. It is a family. It is a home. It is a unit, and it is well lit.
It's interesting that you bring that up, because this is where those omitted scenes of the house being this nightmarish thing that scares Kevin and actually, in his fantasy perspective, comes to life and freaks him out and spooks him and does all of that stuff. This is where that shows up in the script. Like, him waking up in this moment is not because he hears the wet bandits. It's waking up from the nightmare of his house scaring him. There's mannequins talking and things, and I think the clock comes to life and starts talking to him. There's stuff like that in the script about how he's trying to be brave. He's trying to remember things that his father said about, being the man of the house and facing your fears and stuff like that, and it overwhelming him to a fanciful degree that I think you and I have talked about the movie ultimately never needed in the first place. So good to cut it. But that's where this happens.
So he wakes up from that. But is that not also like a spidey sense? The dream he's having is tying into reality in some way and waking him up just in the nick of time?
I agree with that justification, but looking at the great movie we have in front of us, clearly that's not what this movie needs.
Oh, I apologize if it sounded at all like I felt like that's the way that it should have gone. This is exactly the way that this should be right here. I suppose what I was trying to say is that the reaction he's having feels like it always should have been what it is here.
Yes.
Even when we were putting this other treatment on top of it.
Yeah, it's interesting to see. They say a movie gets made 3 times. You make it when you write it, you make it when you shoot it, and you make it again when you edit it. I don't think they ever shot those moments of the house coming to life. They had elaborate plans to animate the furnace and all that kind of stuff, and they dropped all that. I don't know. I don't think they ever shot it.
Well, they do have him waking up here, and we have this nice establishing shot of him asleep. And while I could say, oh, you could intersperse a dream sequence into that, I would also say that you're probably not planning on that if it's a surprise return to waking. Said another way, if you're shooting the shot of him waking up thinking that it's going to be a surprise return from a dream state, you're likely not shooting it with this television into junk food.
Yes.
So the way that it's shot tells me that by this point they had abandoned.
That was not the plan.
Yeah.
It's interesting to see that was at some point part of the plan, and to see how such a perfect movie wasn't always perfect. That these things are the process of revision and retooling and rethinking and realizing better paths. I like seeing stuff like that. That even it's easy to incorrectly assume that something as magical as Home Alone just came out perfect, and it got written with all sorts of weird, unnecessary stuff in it, and they cut it out.
The big thing is that it came out. And I think that's part of it, is that perfection is the enemy of good enough. And quite often you can toil away on something, making it perfect, and it never happens. And in the time that you make one perfect decision, I can make 100 bad ones.
What is maybe harder to guess, and even if we had access to these people, they might not remember it well or give themselves credit where it's maybe not deserved, and that kind of thing, is taking out a talking furnace and a talking clock and a talking mannequin and this spooky, nightmarish scene. Was it a narrative decision? Was it budgetary? Were they looking at how much it would cost to get all that done and then make a different choice? Kind of the same way, like, Jaws is so good because the shark wasn't working, so they couldn't show it very much. Did this get cut under the protest of some artists who really thought that it did belong? And if they were to throw the money at it and shoot it, would they just edit it out later in editing, realizing they don't need it at all? Then we wouldn't have this great pan from the Grinch to Kevin. So then we're backing up and it's not as good of a movie.
Well, and I think it works both ways. What was the scene that would have made Curly Sue an enduring classic that got cut for those very same reasons?
Wow, yeah. I've never seen Curly Sue. Can I say something that might get me fired from this podcast?
I prefer that you say whatever it is.
I've never seen Uncle Buck.
I'll say what my dad said when I told him I wanted to be a professional musician. I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed. I've never had a conversation with my dad.